rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk, if you'll please read the prepared message and call the roll. It's here.
Please be advised this meeting is being taped for video and audio broadcast. Assisted listening devices are available. Mr. Bonifant.
Here.
Mr. Corsello.
Here.
Mr. Hempstead.
Here.
Mr. Kimmel.
Here.
Mr. Sachinelli.
Here.
Ms. Melendez. Here. Mr. Sarasis.
Present.
Ms. Bowman.
Here.
Mr. Sims. Mr. Kides.
Here.
Ms. Maggio. Here. Mr. DePalma.
Here.
Ms. O'Toole Gianderco.
Here.
Mr. Igneri.
Here.
Mr. Livingston.
Here.
14 present, you have a quorum.
14 present, 1 absent. We have a quorum. Next item on the agenda, acceptance of minutes, regular meeting, September 12th, 2017. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Igneri. Any corrections, deletions, omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda, approval or acceptance of minutes, regular meeting of September 26, 2017. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Igneri. Any corrections, deletions, omissions?
This is the one we sent back, right?
Yes, those, was it the 12th or the 26th we sent back?
12.
12.
Right.
So the 26th. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Ms. Maggio abstains. Next item on the agenda, public participation. Ms. King?
Michael Shanahan.
Yep, come on down to the podium. Give your name, address, and there's a generally a 3-minute limit.
Almost a minute.
Okay.
My name is Michael Shanahan. Citizen of Norwalk. I was born here. I went to school here. I was in the fire department here. I retired from the fire department. About 16 retirees passed this year alone. I'm just wondering why the rules changed to change our benefits now. Why couldn't you just wait till we all die? It's simple as that. Why change rules now? What I understand is you guys are going to be voting on the present fire department contract. It affects us also, us retirees. No one's thinking about us, the retirees. It's an election year. I hope you all remember that.
Thank you.
Carolyn Shanahan.
Hi, that was the other half. I just want you to take what I have to say into consideration when you vote on the contract for Norwalk firefighters. Have these retirees, their spouses and widows not given enough to the city? Are you contemplating asking them for more sacrifices? How many of you sat home and worried endlessly when you heard the fire engines roll? Will my husband come home tonight? How many of you made the ultimate sacrifice and ran into a burning building to save someone? Were they paid? Yes. Were they paid enough to risk their lives? No. They worked because they took pride in their jobs and knew when they retired, the city would have their back. Now you are turning your back on them and the families that supported them. These families that put you in office, these families that live in Norwalk and pay taxes, these families that gave up their holidays, birthdays, and anniversaries so they could protect your lives. So when you're voting on this, think about the retirees. Think about the widows that are on fixed pensions. Think about the fact that these firefighters sacrificed And most of them aren't even eligible to get Social Security. And if they are, they get the Social Security offset, which amounts to nothing. Now, by changing their health benefits and having them go, if they go out of network, and asking them to pay those costs, think about that. Don't think about the firefighters that are in now that can make up these wages. Think about the retirees. Think about what my husband said. Why change their benefits? Thank you.
Thank you. That is all that have signed up for the public participation. Is there anybody else that wishes to address the council before we close public participation session? Seeing none, I will close the public participation session. Under resignations and appointments, we have one resignation, Lee H. Levy from the Zoning Board of Appeals alternate. Under appointments, we have one appointment, Lee H. Levy, Zoning Board of Appeals regular. Do I have a motion? Mr. Kimmel.
Yeah, I would like to move that Mr. Levy's appointment to a regular member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Lee has lived here for a number of years. He's a practicing architect, intelligent, hardworking, been a community activist for a number of years, I believe, and 2 terms as president of the Norwalk Association of Silver Mine Homeowners for about a total of 10 years, which is, as you all know, to be a president of a community organization and one so active as Nash for that long. That's quite a commitment in terms of time and energy and just dealing with all kinds of people. So he should be very proud of that. He's also a former member of the council and the planning commission, among a number of other activities. So I think, Mr. Mayor, this is an excellent appointment, and I hope the full council supports it.
Thank you. Further discussion? Mr. Hempstead.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to compliment your choice. I think I've known Lee 25 years. You can say it's probably been that long, but probably has. I've worked on many things, as Bruce indicated, between Nash over the years as a council person, working with him and his group. But he also brings an expertise to the table that's needed on the planning commission, and that's an architecture and understanding and development. And he's very much in historical preservation as much as possible, and I think that's a good thing to add to the planning commission. So I know Lee serves with vigor wherever he serves.
Thank you. Further discussion? I too have known Lee for many, many years, know him to be a very active person looking to make the city of Norwalk the best it can possibly be. And if you can believe this, he volunteered to be raised to the level of regular as opposed to alternate because of his commitment to the city of Norwalk. And Nash is a very active neighborhood association. They really are engaged in what's better for the city of Norwalk. And I appreciate anybody, including Lee, who is willing to work and volunteer their time to make the city of Norwalk the best it can be. So, having no further discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously. Congratulations, Lee. If you'll step down, we'll issue the, we'll administer the oath of office to you.
Hi, Lee.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to serve.
I'm glad to hear that.
If you would raise your right hand, please. My mic is broken, I'm sorry. You, Lee Levy, having been appointed as a regular member of the Zoning Board of Appeals of the City of Norwalk, do solemnly swear or affirm that you will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office according to your best skill and judgment, so help you God, or upon the pains and penalties of perjury.
I will.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Just sign one of these and take one.
Oh,
Would you-
okay. Sign. Just one for me.
No, don't sign there again.
Okay. Tonight is easy, we only have one of you. Last week it was like 20. Okay.
Fellow lefty. And you can sign that one right over Donna's signature.
Thank you.
That's yours.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Good luck, Lee.
Thank you. Thank you for your support over the years.
No problem, you know that.
As
For
you
your
know,
community
it's been
work.
a difficult year on the zoning board of appeals.
Yes, and we appreciate your hard work.
Thank you. Bruce, thank you. Okay. Thank you. Steve, thank you. All right, thank you.
Next item on the agenda, Mayor's remarks. I just have a few. The NAACP, along with the Norwalk Health Department, are sponsoring a health fair starting at 10 a.m. This Saturday, October 14th, here at City Hall. Silver Mine School's annual Fall Festival will begin on Saturday at 12 noon. We are all aware of the recent passing of the former Director of Public Works, Hal Alvord. His funeral services will be held this Saturday at 2 p.m. at the Green Funeral Home in Danbury. We express our condolences to Hal's family, and he was a person that worked very hard on behalf of the city of Norwalk. Norwalk High School will host the annual Cavalcade of Bands starting at 5 p.m. Saturday. Bands from high schools all over the state will compete. If you haven't come out to see the Cavalcade of Bands and see the Norwalk High School performance, I believe it's called Relics this year, please come out. It's an amazing showcase of the talent, not only of the area schools, but of the school that generally takes first place in every competition that they engage in, and that's the Norwalk High School Band. Was between the Norwalk High School Band and the Brian McMahon High School Bands, they've brought significant recognition to the city of Norwalk. Next Saturday, October 21st, the Human Service Council will hold its annual Touch a Truck Kids Fest from 10 to 3 at Taylor Farm. We are all encouraged to wear a costume for the costume parade, or at least bring a child in costume. My wife and I have been asked to lead the parade. I don't know if we're going to dress in a costume, but come on out. It's a lot of fun. The kids love it. They get an opportunity to see fire trucks, DPW trucks, police vehicles, everything that just excites a child, and it's a lot of fun. So come on out and support the Human Services Council. Those are all the remarks I have. Any council person have a remark that they'd like to add at this time? Okay. Mr. Igneri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the general council business, there is none to discuss tonight, so I will turn the consent calendar over to Mr. Sachinelli. I just wanted to say that last council meeting, we had an excellent reading by Ms. Durkar. We hope you can match that standard.
Thank you. I'll do
Well,
my
you put a
best.
lot of pressure on me right now.
All right. Item 7A1, authorize the Mayor Harry W. Rilling to execute and all agreements, documents, instruments, and amendments thereto as may be necessary to implement all programs through FY 2017 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Grant pursuant to such findings. Item 7B1A, authorize the Mayor Harry W. Rilling to sign the mayoral certification for the PY42 caper. Item 7B1B, approve the advancement of the PY42 caper to HUD. Item 7B2A, approve planning and zoning request to execute separate master service agreement with WSP Rickerhoff and John P. Thompson for on-call professional consulting services. Item 7B2B, authorize the Mayor Harry W. Rilling to execute the contracts. And that's it. Item 7C, that one's off. Item 7D1, a resolution for the Norwalk River Valley Multi-Purpose Trail Phase 2 Union Park to New Canaan Avenue. Whereas the city of Norwalk has published a news release, mailed a copy of the news release to require officials and agency, and mailed a preliminary notification letter to abutting property and business owners announcing proposed transportation project known as State Project 102-350 Norwalk River Valley Multipurpose Trail Phase 2 End, whereas a public comment period was given from September 20th, 2017 to October 3rd, 2017, which allowed interested parties to voice their concern, and whereas the construction phase will be funded utilizing 80% federal funds and 20% municipal funds, and whereas WestCog has selected the project as a regional priority and to utilize federal funds to construction activities, and whereas the mayor has considered the concerns of the residents from the public comment period and finds that the proposed Norwalk River multi-purpose trail is in the best interest of the city of Norwalk and promote the health, safety, and general welfare of its residents and provide for convenience and safety of the traveling public. And whereas the city of Norwalk, based on the above information and by virtue of its resolution, hereby fully support the supposed state project 102-350 Norwalk River Valley Multipurpose Trail Phase 2. And now therefore be it resolved that the city of Norwalk hereby supports STP Urban Transportation Project Title State Project 102-350 Norwalk River Valley Multipurpose Trail Phase 2 and hereby commits to the funding of municipal shares proceeding with the final design accounts as noted. Item 7D2, authorize the purchase agent to issue a sole source purchase order to Cargill for treated road salt for snow and ice control, pricing not to exceed $81.82 per ton for normal after-hour delivery effective for the 2017-2018 season, account as noted. Item 7D3, authorize the purchasing agent to issue a purchase order to Gabrielli Truck Sales of Milford for the purchase of two 2019 Mack GU 713 plow trucks for a sum not to exceed $446,546, account as noted. Item 7E, approves resolution for name change for the Norwalk Shore Haven Special Service Taxing District to the Canfield Islands Special Service Taxing District. That is the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Sacchinelli. Before I ask for comments from the council, I'd just like to make the audience aware that if you heard your item read, once it's voted on and approved, if you can be assured that it's positive, and you could leave if you'd like to. With that, I'll ask the council if they have any comments or changes to the agenda as read. None? I'll call for a vote.
Mr. Hempstead.
Oh,
No, I just want to compliment the council for the River Trail Park, because it's two different setups, two different councils, and two capital budgets. We made a commitment as a council, and we kept that commitment as a council. And I think people need to understand, sometimes all these projects don't happen in 1 year, sometimes it takes a couple of years, and the city maintained its commitment to this project.
thank you, Mr. Hempstead. I have been one that has worked on it through two terms, 2 or 3 terms, and it took a lot of doing by a lot of people around this table, and I thank them. With that, do I have a vote? All in favor? It looks unanimous. With that, I turn it to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Igneri. So now we come to item 7C1, Mr. Sacchinelli.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 7C1, approved tentative agreement between City and Fire Union, IAFF Local 830. I'd like to move to suspend the rules and take this item off of executive session and put it on the regular agenda.
Mr. Sacchinelli has moved to take this off the agenda, to go off the agenda, remove this from executive session, and bring it to public session. All in favor? Opposed? Abstention? So carries. Mr. Sacchinelli.
So I need to recuse myself.
I'm sorry. Please let the record reflect that Ms. Maggio has to recuse herself. Mr. Sacchinelli.
Would you like to call a roll call vote for this?
Well, you want to move it and then?
Yes, I'd like to move approved tentative agreement between City and Fire Union, IAFF Local 830.
Okay, I think that we've had a few people speak out on this issue. We have Mr. Burney here. Perhaps you'd like to have Mr. Burney come forward if you have any questions. I know there are retirees here that would like to have this discussed in greater detail. I know I've met with Ms. Caruso on a few occasions to discuss this, and I just want to make sure that everybody has an understanding of what's going on and what Mr. Burney is prepared to do regarding the retirees.
I'm sorry, I was just getting out my cards for them to call me if they had any questions.
That's quite all right.
So what we have in front of you this evening for your approval is the final collective bargaining agreement with the Fire Department Union. It was overwhelmingly ratified by the rank and file by greater than 10-1. It contains the same wage increases that we ratified, that you guys approved for the police union back in June. It has everyone, actives and retirees, going into the Connecticut Partnership Plan 2.0, and a few other elements that are laid out in the memo that I sent all of you for tonight's meeting. The bottom line is it fits within the parameters, financial and otherwise, of the agreements that we're trying to reach here with the employees in the city of Norwalk, and I ask for your approval.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Chair. Yes.
I have a question. If a doctor, in the new agreement, if the doctor who is currently seeing patients who are in the bargaining unit, if that doctor under the new agreement is out of the network, is it relatively easy to bring that doctor into the network?
We've met with the representatives of the partnership plan, and their overture to us was not only is it an easy process to do, that they're willing to work with us as aggressively as they possibly can to get doctors that are not in the Oxford plan into the plan, so the city actives and retirees can continue to go to that doctor. As a matter of fact, the plan and the current plan have about a 90% overlay of doctors as it is right now. So there are exceptions, there are one-offs, but it's a pretty tight list already. But to the extent that there are doctors that are not on the plan, the 2.0 representatives have a whole program to go out, and once the city has committed to go in to the plan, to go out and meet with those doctors and talk to them about moving into the partnership plan.
Thank you.
Mr. Hempstead.
I thought the question was asked at committee meeting about benefits of retirees, and do the retirees keep their benefits that when they were retired? And I thought the answer was, whatever the agreement was at the time that they retired is what their benefits will be.
That's correct.
But then,
That
so let me just take that a step further. Then the Norwalk, switching over to the 2.0, the Connecticut 2.0, are the benefits that the retirees had when they retired expanded underneath Connecticut 2.0 plan to give them the equivalent to what they had underneath the retirement. That's why I kind of understood that,
they are the equivalent and or better.
to what they have.
Yes.
And it's obviously by some of the members that are here that I know tonight, doesn't seem like that was communicated well to the retirees. I don't know whose function that should be. I'm not saying anything whose job it was, but somehow, because it sounds like some of the angst that's come out of this is the fact that they think they're getting less benefits than they had before. And having gone through this internally at home, because my wife is a teacher and she got switched to this plan, in most cases it's a better plan from out-of-pocket expenses long-term.
Right.
So, but I think we need to understand that they are getting equal or better, is what you're saying?
That's correct.
Could you give an example of that? In other words, copay, cost sharing?
Well, for example, the copays go from the officers' copay goes from $25 down to $15. That's one example of the benefit of going. Also, by and large, for most everyone in every category, if they're making contributions on a weekly or monthly basis for their benefits, those contribution levels will go down. I understand the angst, and one of the initiatives that we have in doing this, trying to bring the whole city into the partnership plan by January 1st, is the partnership plan, one of the commitment from us that was indeed going to happen. Now that we're about to give them that commitment, we're going to set up, hopefully as early as the last week of this month, more likely throughout November and early December, sessions for retirees and active employees to come in, hear all about the plan, answer their questions, and our objective is to make it as seamless as possible, so that at the end of the day, all they'll be doing is showing a different card to their same doctors, not filling out more paperwork or different paperwork or re-enrolling. Our effort is to get the current provider to transfer all the database over to 2.0 so it's as seamless as possible for everyone involved. And that doesn't happen overnight, which is why we're sort of up against the wall here time-wise to get it done so that everyone can be enrolled for the January 1st benefit year, both actives and retirees.
Come on, okay. In a question of retirees, you have people now have been retired from the fire for 10, 15, 20 years, and they've probably been going to the same doctor for 10, 15, 20 years. What guarantee can we give those kind of individuals that your doctor that was in the plan before, you can still see that same doctor and it's going to cost you this? Because I don't think that's necessarily true. Because if they're out of network, quote unquote, there's an additional expense out of pocket, correct?
That is true, but the premise of your question, I think, needs some clarification. It's my understanding, I wasn't here, but it's my understanding that the benefit provider has changed over the years, 2 or 3 times, at least in the past 10 or 15 years. So the fact that we're changing the benefits provider is not a new phenomenon.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, you know, I apologize, we've had public participation, and we're going to have, as Mr. Burney said, we're going to have sessions. Mr. Burney, I have one question. The question I have for you, Mr. Burney, is what protection would we have to ensure that the retired firefighters, or retired police officers for that matter, or any retired person, has equal or better benefits than what they've had in the past? So under the 2.0 plan, it's my understanding that the cost sharing goes down, the copay goes down, but there's concern about a carryover of the doctors from their current plan into the new plan. How are we going to assure the firefighters and the police officers that they are going to have equal or better benefits?
Well, the benefit level question I don't think is in doubt at all. The benefit levels, the coverage, the provisions, what gets covered, what doesn't get covered, is at least as good and better for retirees. There's even some more enhancements about gym enrollment and memberships and those type of small details. The guarantee that I don't think we can give is that every single doctor, that every single active and retirees will definitively enroll into the 2.0 plan. That's the individual doctor's choice. We're going to make every possible effort we can to get them in, and it would seem to me that if doctors have a significant number of active or retired Norwalk employees, it's in their interest also to come into the plan if they're not in it currently. But assurance is it's a funny word. I don't think that I can stand up here and say we can absolutely assure that every doctor, that every retiree and every active goes to will be in this plan, but we'll make our very best efforts to do so.
Mr. Sarasis, then Mr.
I don't believe that you answered Mr. Hempstead's question. I think we circled around the tree. Can you? I'll defer to Mr. Hempstead, but I don't think he answered your question about the doctors and about the cost.
Yeah, I mean, you're correct.
Thank you. I thought it wasn't answered.
The collective bargaining agreement.
Maybe he should make it clear again what he's trying to ask if it wasn't answered properly the first time.
So what we're saying, the pre-approved doctors underneath the row plan, and I get it, because they went from an HSA from a different plan, and I know the plans have switched over the years. But the question is about, when you're dealing with individuals, you're dealing with continuity of doctors and who do you trust? And I think that's one of the most difficult things about healthcare, is trying to do that, especially when you're talking about retirees. So the question is that, to be out of network, how do we work into this some way, somehow, considering there's the number of retirees is changing constantly, that they're not paying a lot more out of pocket for going out of network if their doctor wasn't joining that? Because I know the situation all too well, too familiar with what has happened. But how do we work that in? Because I think it's just about fairness more than anything. And I'm sorry, the way it was explained to me, I thought when we had our committee meeting that they were getting whatever they had when they left.
They are.
I'm not arguing about, some of this plan is really good. I'm just trying to, And I guess like anything, it's a communication device. Nobody talked to them, so now it's more of a, what are they trying to pull or whatever. And I think, I don't know. I just, it's the same, but it's not the same. It's only the same if they're in the network. If they're not in the network, how much more is the difference out of pocket, out of network versus what it is now in network?
Well, in that case, it would be approximately, again, the out-of-network charges 20% of the doctor's reasonable and customary fee is what the individual active or retiree would pay if they chose to go to a doctor who was not in network.
And is that true underneath the present plan?
Yes.
Mr. Bernie, I have a question. We have had situations in the past, and I believe the city of New Haven has a number of plans. I believe as many as 30 or 35 different medical plans. Would it be possible, if we convert to the 2.0, to allow the retired firefighters to opt into the 2.0 or remain in their current plan?
Probably not.
Why?
Be cost prohibitive. No insurance carrier would insure that small of a group at that age with that potential exposure.
When are you going to be having a meeting with the retired firefighters to answer their questions, address their issues, and try to work through this whole process?
We hope to have those meetings scheduled last week of this month, certainly in November. That's 2 months in advance of the changeover.
I'm confused, so that means we're gonna vote for it tonight, but they're not gonna meet with
Well, this
them?
is a contract. This is a contract for the regular fire department.
But if we go forward, what's the purpose of a meeting?
Mr. Kimmel?
He's answering me.
Yeah, in the negotiations and the discussions that led to the new contract, was in general, this particular time and in general, for the firefighters union, is there a representative from the retirees chapter or the retirees as part of the negotiations?
No.
Is that standard for all city unions?
Yes.
Is there a reason that I'm missing here?
Retirees are not part of the collective bargaining unit that gets to vote on the
I agree,
contract.
but as I said, it was a representative from there to be involved.
Well, the union represents their interests at the table.
I agree.
Right. So
And the union.
there's no individual retiree representative.
Fine, and the union's position is that, see, we find ourselves in an interesting situation procedurally. If we do nothing, this will pass. If I don't think we have options that we do with other kinds of items that come before us because of the timelines associated with collective bargaining. And my feeling is what you have presented to us, is it fair to say for the overwhelming majority of retirees, and many of those 20, 30 years are on Medicare, I'm assuming, so it's maybe a different situation, 20 years retired, 30 years retired. So what we are dealing with is a contract that was agreed to, which for the overwhelming majority of the members, you said 10-1, was approved. And you're saying for the overwhelming majority, or large majority of the retirees, is this a fair statement? The overwhelming majority of the retirees, you are certain that their benefits will be at least the same level or better, and their costs will go down?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Bonifant?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Everybody here knows it, but just so that other people, we're not allowed to make amendments or do anything like that. It's a take it or leave it full package, yes or no. And everybody here knows that. I just want to say it. But I have a procedural question, so if, Mr. Coppola, if you could give me an opinion on something. Our letter, this has been like signed by the union and by the personnel department, right? Both of these have been signed, now it comes to us, right?
It's been ratified by the membership, yeah.
That's what I mean.
Right.
They've signed it and you've signed it.
Yes.
At that point, people call me for a question, and my envelope is marked confidential, and I don't want to break any confidence. I don't want to compromise anybody's position. But if they signed it and the union signed it, and somebody calls me up and asks me a question about what's in it, am I allowed to talk about it, or or you're not allowed to talk about it until we voted on it?
Well, at this point, you could discuss it. The whole purpose of having it confidential is there's a carve out in FOIA for the Freedom of Information Act for purposes of discussing collective bargaining agreements, personnel matters.
Right.
So we try to maintain those in confidence so that we could have a fair discussion about terms of an agreement. So it's usually not best practice to be discussing it until we've had an opportunity to discuss in executive session. In this case, the council decided to put the item on consent, but then obviously we took it off because of Ms. Maggio having the conflict.
But you understand my question, that they both agreed to this and they both signed it, and it's in our package, and people are calling us and asking us about it, about the content. And I just played it safe by not saying anything. I said I better not say anything because I don't know. But would it have been a breach of anything if I would have answered their question?
I think the cake was baked at this point, but I think if we were earlier in the process, the answer would have been no. But at this point, I think it would have been okay.
Beginning one.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's 21.
However, we always try to, it's always a fine line of what we can or can't say.
From the day they ratified. Ms. O'Toole, Jean Durko.
Mr. Coppola, further to Mr. Bonifant's point, whether we vote this up or down, in 30 days it becomes ratified, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Is it 30 days, or how many days is it, Mr. Burney?
That's what I was gonna ask.
30 days from the date the union notified me, which was about 5 or 6 days ago.
So,
The official, as I understand it, and I defer to corporate counsel, your obligation is to vote to not disapprove this contract. Because if no action is taken after 30 days from, let's say, 5 days ago, it becomes approved.
one moment. Mrs. Shanahan, I know you wish to speak, but the council rules do not provide for that after you've made your public participation. This is now a discussion among the council. I apologize, but it's just not the way that the council rules are situated. Mr. Igneri.
Is this one contract or two? I'm going to break the rules. Is this one contract or two?
Mr. Burney, you can answer that question.
The second contract is the contract that was signed the day he retired. Two contracts. How many contracts?
Okay, I'm sorry. I appreciate your concern. We're very happy to hear your concerns. And Mr. Burney will be having meetings to bring everybody in so he can explain to them about the details of the 2.0. And if there are concerns after that, I think we're going to do everything we can to address them.
My question to Mr. Burney is, are you available before November 1st to discuss this, even though you may not have all the details?
With who?
With some of the members?
Yes.
Okay.
I won't have everyone's individual particular answers to their one-off set of circumstances, nor do I know every detail of every line of every paragraph in the 2.0 program, but I can certainly meet with them and hear what their concerns are. I met with one of the women in the audience today, as a matter of fact, for half an hour, and went over everything I could tell her. She wasn't completely happy, but we had a nice discussion. Correct?
Mr. Sims.
Yes, to me, it seems to be, they have a great deal of pushback from a lot of the retirees that are even in here tonight. Is there any alternatives to retabling this process until there's a clarification and communications with the retirees elected, and you can go step by step to show them how their plan will be compared to the plan that they just left. I think that there's some uninsured retirees now, and to move forward. And I mean, from my understanding as well, if we vote for this or vote against it, it's, in 30 days, this will still be, passed, correct? And, which I just find.
Not if we vote against it.
All right, so if we vote against it,
25
then
days.
it doesn't go through. But if we don't vote at all, then it will go through in 30 days.
Right, 25 days. 5 days have already passed.
Point of information.
Right.
Okay,
25.
Mr. Kimmel has a point of information.
Point of information. If I remember correctly, in the summer 2004, the council voted to not approve an extension of the teacher's contract. It had to do with healthcare savings. Within a rather short period of time, the issue was in binding arbitration, and the city was told to get out. It passed. Basically, that's what happened. It was an agreed-upon contract. And the only issue that the arbitrators were concerned about was the ability of the city to pay for it. Now, here we have a contract. We've gone through all of the state mandated requirements. We follow the timelines. We have it before us. If we say no, will they go right into arbitration? And that's that.
That will depend upon how the parties react to it, but what I have to inform the council is that the entire financial basis for resolving these contracts is predicated upon January 1st entrance into 2.0 and the cost savings the city would realize. If we delay, the drop dead date is more or less November 1st for us to officially notify 2.0 that we're in or we're not in. If we don't hit that, we're not in January 1st, then it's incumbent upon me to go back to the mayor and to Mr. Barron and say we have to recalculate what's on the table for the employees as far as wage increases and concessions and everything else, because the foundation upon which this contract and the others I'm trying to line up to get to you at the next meeting crumbles. So now we're dealing with a different environment as far as how much money there is to resolve a contract. Once I say that to the unions, then we probably will end up in arbitration.
Yes, if I may, I took the, maybe Mr. Barron could answer that, but generally we look at contracts. From the council, we're not the union, and we're not firefighters, we're not doing the negotiations. Our job has generally been to look at the net cost to the city, the net costs. We understand that salary increases are just one side of it,
Right.
okay? So the net cost of the city for a contract, which is shifting us to 2.0, I imagine the net cost is rather low, even with the average roughly 2.5% salary increases averaged over the life of the contract. Can you give us a figure for the net cost to the city?
The net cost is below 2.5.
Okay, so the net cost to the city is within is under the benchmark that we have used for our purposes. We didn't negotiate this, it's not our contract. But so the benchmark that we have used for contract after contract after contract is net cost to the city. That way we do not micromanage contractual negotiations. If this is within that threshold, underneath that threshold, I think if we're to follow past practice and not get ourselves tangled up into a situation where going forward we end up, something goes through personnel, it comes here, and we end up renegotiating something that's already been negotiated, which could be a delicate balance with many parties involved. We want to avoid that kind of situation. So my feeling is we should go by our standard rule of thumb. This has been negotiated. The net cost of the city is within the guidelines that we established, so that we should not vote it down, is my point. We will do our job. Where I think the ball may have been dropped, and it may be something that has to be looked into going forward, is that as a retiree from the United Federation of Teachers, I am always made aware of all kinds of things going on regarding this and that negotiations, and their retirees are pretty much in one way or the other involved in one way or the other, so they're not surprised or that they are not forgotten. So I think going forward, maybe we can tweak a little bit how we go about some of these negotiations. But as a council member, I think our job is to say it's less than 3. The union may have to do a little better job educating and working with the retirees, but what we have before us is something I think we should not vote down. if we do, we're going to end up in arbitration. We may screw up the 2-0 thing, and it could create some ripple effects for other unions. That's all I know. Thank you.
Mr. Hempstead.
There's, from sitting through the Personnel Committee, going through the presentation, there's nothing in the contract, I don't think anybody's saying voted down, I don't think there's anything in the contract that's objectionable. It's pretty much a police contract, somewhat mirrored, and we already voted for the police contract. What is troubling me is that the retirees weren't communicated to. Like I said, I think that falls more responsibility of the leadership of the unions at this particular game, because it is their former membership that they would think they would take into care and communicate with. My only thing is that for communication to happen after the fact, we vote on it tonight, versus if we waited 2 weeks, because what happens in 28 days, it becomes law unless there's a no vote. And I don't think a no vote is going to happen, because you have to look at this holistically as to the benefit of the taxpayers, et cetera, but you don't want to leave people out in the cold. I'm not going to make a motion, but I'd just like to consider this, we wait till our next meeting just to, so they have time to communicate, and at least take away any belabor. But with the understanding now, to those people that are firefighters, I know a few, I know all of them out there, in fact, that the problem is you can't undo what the union's already done. And the union's already negotiated this in good faith, all right, and ratified it by their membership. And the city has, through its negotiations, basically, as the appointee by the mayor, said, we agree too. And it went through committee. But I'd just like to make sure that at least our answers can be answered before we kind of vote yes. If we don't do anything in 2 weeks, it still becomes law.
Further discussion?
So I'd like to make,
He's gonna make a motion.
I'd like to move this table to our next meeting, which is 2 weeks, which is within the 28-day time frame.
Okay, Mr. Hempstead has made a motion to table. The motion to table is not debatable. And,
I have a question regarding date. That's debatable.
okay, question regarding date.
I'm not saying I agree with Mr. Hempstead. In fact, you make some good points, but I don't agree. It's not our job. And I'm not going to make assumptions about what the union did and didn't do vis-a-vis its retirees without hearing from them first. But the date, the 24th, 2 weeks, is basically 1 week before the October, the drop dead date. I'm not sure what has to happen between our vote and what the city needs to do, and whether 6 or 7 days is enough time. So before we vote to table it to the, to the 24th, I would like to know if that is, what are the ramifications of that date, of picking that date? That's it, to make sure we don't back ourselves into a corner which we can't get out of.
Mr. Coelho?
I defer to the personnel director, because I don't have the exact dates.
Well, it slows down movement with the other unions, who I've attempted to line up so that we could get them to that meeting for your consideration. It throws into question, just by virtue of it, this contract not being approved tonight. And I strongly advise that we not take that course of action. But by virtue of...
It's not debatable, so we either have to vote on the motion.
But do we still have time?
I have a direct question to what
Well,
you just said. though.
Mr. Hempstead, do you want to withdraw your,
That's why I tried to do it the way I did it.
For a moment.
I'll withdraw my motion to the table.
okay, so now we can have further discussion.
Thank you.
Ms. O'Toole, Jane Durko?
I waited.
So you're saying there's other unions that you're trying to get on this plan as well?
Yes.
Who's
Yes.
outstanding? Because the police just went on, the teachers just went on. I assume the firefighters are the third biggest. Who's still outstanding?
It's the workers in the DPW, the white collar, and the supervisory groups, about 300 or so remaining city employees in 3 different unions.
Ms. Melendez?
I agree with both Mr. Kimmel and Mr. Hempstead's point on this, but coming from more of a realistic kind of way, if we were to table, would any information be able to, would you be able to provide any different information that you can't provide, that you haven't already provided between those dates? Because if we can't get the state person anyway until the end of the month, then like, I just don't, you know what I mean? If we're gonna give it more time, let that time be effective, but if it's not gonna be effective, then we're just left kind of in
The
the same
state people
exact
will
spot.
not come and give presentations until it's done.
So,
It's a matter of resources.
So the
They made it clear to me that it's a matter of their own individual resources, that that's their decision that they've made, that they're not going to come and give orientation to sessions to employees of a city that have not committed to going in. They just don't have the resources to do it.
But what about you giving?
I can meet with them, I can meet.
That's what
with
I'm asking.
Any,
Rather, if
any
the state
group.
person can't come down,
but
I think the information that you have could help answer any questions that the retirees may have.
to, briefly to the mayor's point and to your point, it seems that you've been very honest that there are a lot of things that you can answer, but that there are still some instances where you can't answer it, and that's not on you. You don't work for the state. But personally, if we're going to table something, let it be an effective time period to table. But then another point is, would they come? The police department approved it. That's an approved thing. Is there any way to kind of tell them that? Well, we already have one and we're working on the second, but can you come so we can? There's been a commitment that's been made from the city because at least two of our unions are already on it.
Yes.
I know it's not.
We've made the police union and this panel has affirmed them going into 2.0 on January 1st. There's been no efforts to get them briefed on it because we're waiting for all of the remaining unions to line up and come in for January 1st. So the 2.0 officials don't even know officially yet that the police union is in because they want to know, do you have everybody?
So you don't think, so in your opinion, what would this 2-week period even do, if anything, different than what the information you've been able to provide?
I don't think it would get to the resolution that people are hoping for.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Akides is next. Mr. Akides?
Yeah, to Ms. Melendez's point, and I think everyone's sympathetic to retired firemen, and their families. That's a no-brainer. But to Ms. Melendez's point, it's not like you're going back to the table, the city's going back to the table with the fire union and renegotiating this, correct, in these 2 weeks? What it is what it is. Is that a yes?
If it's tabled, no.
Like by tabling it for 2 weeks, it's not like you're going to go back to negotiating with the union, correct?
No, I
Right.
will not.
And the information you have now is the same information you're going to have in 2 weeks until this is a signed, done deal, and then you'll have the specifics to present to the retirees and to their families?
What we will have is the answer people from the state who can answer. I don't claim to be an expert in 2.0. I know a lot about it, but how 2.0 is applied is not my responsibility, so I can't give definitive answers to all the questions that the retirees and the active employees are going to have. Keep in mind, there's 700 actives, 1,400 or 1,500 retirees, so we're talking about 2,000 people that are going to be moved into 2.0 on January 1st. So, there's a whole order of magnitude going on here also. This is collective bargaining, not individual bargaining. There's no doubt in anybody's assessment that it's beneficial to the city and it's beneficial to the employee population, active and retired, as a general proposition. There's going to be one-offs all the time when you're talking about 2,000 people and health benefits. There's always going to be one-offs. But collectively, it's a good deal for the city and a good deal for the employees and retirees that are affected by it.
I'm just not seeing how tabling this will benefit anything. I think we're going to still be looking exactly what we're looking at now. If tabling this smiles everyone in this room, I'll be all for it, but I think we're just extending this for absolutely no reason to 2 weeks from now. I wish things could be different, but they're not.
Mr. Sarastis, then Ms. Bowman.
I think that if we extended it all a day, a week, or 2 weeks, it's because of the human factor. These people want an answer, and they don't have all the answers, and they weren't even spoken to. So that part of it, for somebody to serve the city for years for us and served it well. I mean, we owe it to them for them at least to have answers to their questions. I don't understand that. Going back to Mr. Hempstead wanting to table it till the next meeting, is it possible that we could table it and have a special meeting next week, and maybe they can get their questions answered this week or the beginning of next week, and we can do it, have a special meeting just for this, a council meeting? We've done that before for other things. I'm asking, is that possible? That way we shorten the 2-week window.
That would be up to the council.
And we at least show respect to the people that served our city.
That would be up to the council. Ms. Bowman?
That would be an emotion, Mr. Mayor?
Well, you'd have to table it until it's a date specific, and then agree to get the council to have a special meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Bowman is next, and then Mr. Igneri.
I would say that the process that you need to have with these retirees is something that you're going to need to have with the retirees of all of the groups that you're pushing down the line. So, I mean, to have it makes sense. For example, my job wouldn't even choose a new health plan without at least giving us 3 options that we know about prior, so that we have an idea of what we're getting into. Now, I guess the union agreed to this, but I don't know. I can't say. It's interesting. Is anybody here from the fire union?
Mr.
One
Petrides.
person? Okay. Can you come? Can we hear from him? I mean,
Mr. Petrides, would you come down?
I'm not a public speaker.
I just think they have a couple of questions. Why don't you come down?
Well, let me just say, actually, easy question. Well, it may not actually be that easy, but can you tell me, do you feel like you're comfortable and familiar with this plan, this health plan?
Yeah.
From what you were told in your...
Otherwise, can't transcript.
Why don't you come down so you can speak into the mic?
I'll answer your questions.
So you're as comfortable as could be with this plan?
I am.
Um,
Mr. Hempstead there was alluding to the fact that the retirees aren't informed. There was a group of retirees. Brian in here? Brian, were you part of that with Jack and Frank Peloso? Were the liaisons for the retirees? Yes, I was. Okay, so were you informed? And they were supposed to be informed. Well, that's not on the union part. We had liaisons for you. We didn't. We had no representative. We had no, I'm not saying it's a union. There's language in the contract that allows the city to change plans, cost effective. It's there. So why did you delay it for 2 weeks? It's on you, you can do that, that's fine. Don't delay it, vote on it, no, spoke up. Just get it over with.
Miss,
You're gonna allow 3 retirees?
okay.
4 retirees?
Mr. Igneri?
Mr. Mayor, we are now negotiating aspects that the union negotiated, which is not our job. That's not why we're here today. We are here to say, yes, this is good for the city, and it's been negotiated by the union, and that's all we're here to say. We can't criticize or try to change what they've negotiated. So, that's to the point Mr. Kimmel made and Mr. Keides made.
Mr. Kimmel?
Look, we have to be realistic here. To repeat this again, it doesn't matter if we table it 20 times. We're not changing anything. This has been negotiated in good faith by the city and the union representing the firefighters. I have no idea what we're doing. I understand it's an odd, what is it, 2017? It's an odd year. It's the fall. Many folks are up for re-election. It's complicated. Some folks are probably thinking if no one had come out, it would have gone right through. And we've lost sight of the bigger issue here. Number one, we don't have all the information because we weren't in negotiations. Number two, remind you, it did go through committee and it got here. Okay, it went through committee and it got here. And now we're doing all this committee work. And I think that's a bad practice. It shouldn't have gotten here if there were questions like this to be raised. But it went through committee, I understand easily, and it came here. We don't have all the information. We're beginning to realize, well, maybe there were some liaisons with the union negotiators and the retirees. Okay, well, there's a few people who say, no, I'm not going to go by that. I am going to go by the fact, under law, what we can do is very, very little, if anything. We can spoil this for the city by playing some little games, by extending it for 2 weeks. When he can't change anything, they're not renegotiating anything. It's just not going to happen. So what exactly are we doing? Like I said, I went through this charade, and Mr. Hempstead may have been there too on the council, with the extension of the teacher's contract in 2004. We did the same thing, and boom, next week, and it wasn't such a deadline, in arbitration, the arbitrators told Mr. Hamilton, sorry, leave the room. This is no standing. This thing has been negotiated in its law. This has been negotiated according to state law, and it's before us. And I'm not quite sure. We're saying, well, maybe we didn't like the way the union and the city negotiated it. Now, what do we do next time? I don't like that provision. I don't know. Excuse me. This is not our job. And every person sitting here in this side of the room with me knows that. And we haven't gone through this kind of discussion before. All right? We are not negotiating a contract. We are not renegotiating a contract. We are not putting it up, extending it so. I have no idea why. There's a lot of retirees out there, a whole lot of them. That's the union's job. You assume the union did the right thing. You assume that. They were elected by the membership. That's all I can say.
Mr. Sacchinelli?
Just a point of information for the council members. This was not drafted in haste, so we keep going back to this 2-week time frame. There was over a year of conversation between the union and the city, and both parties are satisfied. So just to put that in perspective as well.
Ms. Bowman?
Yes, I mean, the point of the matter is we're not going to just ignore the retirees, okay? So I think at this point they have the process down. The unions made this deal with the city. They are on the plan. It does affect them, and they do need to be informed. Now, the teachers switched over, but they had issues with it too as well, and needed to. It's their health. I mean, it's not like they are not going to care. It's not like they should not be informed. So we do want to help these individuals. If your office is equipped to help them in a short amount of time, in terms of, because it sounds like it's going to fall on you.
Yeah,
Right.
and my office fully embraces the responsibility of doing what any one of you would do if a retiree walked in and said, I have a problem. We're going to try to fix that problem. We will do anything reasonable and within our power and authority to fix that problem. That's what we're there for. We have, throughout discussions with this union and the other unions, said we would set up the briefing sessions after ratification to make sure everyone knew what to do. I have someone on my staff dedicated to just this, to making sure that everybody who comes in gets their questions answered. And we hope that 95% of the times the answer is that the question is answered the way they want it. But there are going to be exceptions. There's just no way around that when you're talking about 2,000 people in medical benefits. But we're going to do anything that any one of you would do for a retiree within our power and authority to rectify their situation. That's what we're trying to gear up to do for the next 10 weeks and continuing as the plan goes into place and people have real issues. And that's what we're trying to solve, their real problems. At least give them answers to their real problems.
Okay, and I think it would be proactive to go ahead and open that up to everyone that you're about to switch over, and even also that you have switched over, because I mean, and you may need some help, and we may need to, and that may be a cost factor that we need to weigh into this situation, that he may need some help with this situation, but because people may have illnesses and sicknesses that they don't, a small lapse in service is going to be an issue. So, let's get them, we need to assure these people that, assure these retirees that have served our city very greatly that we will fill in the gaps. And, we've been talking about some additional services for the city to fill in gaps. So, we need to do this. But we understand the process, that really our vote is only ceremonial anyway, because they've already made the decision, unfortunately. But
Mr. Hempstead.
Well, I just want to rebut a couple of things to say, because I think people don't listen to my previous statement. I voted for this in committee, because we did ask questions, we did do committee work, and one of the council members at the committee, though, did ask the question, are the benefits retiring remaining the same for the retirees? And the answer we got was yes. We get here tonight and we find out that's not necessarily true. So that's why this discussion came about, because the statement that was kind of a carte blanche statement was answered that way. And the chairman shaking his head, yes, he was there. I'm not picking on anybody. I voted for the contract because I think it's the right thing. It's the way things are heading for the city. The talk about a 2-week tabling issue is more about a courtesy to at least the people that were not informed about this. I said before, I did envision this changing, because you're looking at the holistic view from that. If the membership ratified it, and the mayor by statute, he's the negotiator. You're absolutely right, Bruce. The council cannot negotiate the contract. Its obligation is voted up or down, or not go for it at all, which means a yay vote. The mayor can appoint anybody. That was done. So negotiations are done, and I agree. It was more of an offer of a courtesy to the people in the audience, but you're right, at the end of the day, it's not going to change anything. I don't disagree with any of that. So it's more of, but then I understand, which I did not know until you went over there and said that there was somebody that was a retiree at the table, I guess, or at least informed. I don't know how that goes. I'm not there. That there at least was representation that was aware of the fact. So it's more of an internal communication issue. Health benefits are changing all over the place. Nobody likes to change health benefits. I know that for a fact, but I feel bad for the retirees. If you're affected in the negative sense, but there's nothing here that we can do as a council that can change that. We can't change that. All right, that would have to go the next time there'd be no negotiation. This contract's good, for 3 years?
Yeah.
It's a year in arrears, right?
1 year arrears,
Right.
3 years forward.
So, I voted for it in committee because I thought it was a good deal for the city. Just trying to make my opinion. It's a courtesy for the people.
Further discussion? Ms. Melendez.
Again, everything, I'm a member of that committee, also everything that Doug said, Kimmel, Ms. Bowman, and Mr. Sarasas, I just personally, I know that to leaving it to 1 week and to having a special meeting, that can get very complicated, because we've tried to do special meetings before and it's been very difficult to get enough people, in some cases even a quorum. But I know that some people have already asked Mr. Burney questions, and he's done as much as he could, because again, he doesn't work for the state, and we're waiting for that state person. So I just kind of want to throw it out to the council to keep this in mind. I just don't know how we really go forward from here and truly be effective in this time period. I'm speaking from a position of my father's a retiree from the police department. This will also affect me eventually also, as it will him, as it will other city employees, and it's a very difficult thing, obviously, to hear that people are left out, people who served, people who put their life on the line for us were left out of a conversation. That's absolutely horrible. But if they're not going to get the information that satisfies them within a time period that we table it, what if anything are we doing? That's just what I'm throwing out there. I just want this to be as effective and as transparent as possible. And if we have someone who's done as much as he can do, and it still might not be enough, then, you know, where do we go? Just throwing it out there. As before if someone does make a motion to table or whatever happens, keep that in mind. I personally don't know what to do either. It's a tough decision. It's respect, but it's also a reality of where we are as a council. You weren't at the table, so.
Further discussion? Seeing none?
Roll call?
Roll call vote?
Question, we're voting on the contract?
Yes.
Okay. Just-
Mr. Bonifant,
Yes.
Mr. Corsello,
Yes.
Mr. Hempstead,
Yes.
Mr. Kimmel,
Yeah.
Mr. Sachinelli,
Yes.
Ms. Melendez,
Pass.
Mr. Sarasis,
Abstain.
Ms. Baumann,
Abstain.
Mr. Sims,
Abstain.
Mr. Kides,
Yes.
Mr. De Palma,
Yes.
Ms. O'Toole Gianderko,
Yes.
Mr. Igneri,
Yes.
Mr. Livingston,
Yes. You have to go back to Ms. Melendez.
You have to come.
Ms. Melendez,
Yes.
there's 11 yeses.
11 yeses, 3 abstentions. The motion passes.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Hempstead?
Just as a leader of our committee, could you try and at least work out an informational session with the people that are concerned here tonight? 'Cause
Thank you. I've
some of
already
the
done that.
fears may be legitimate.
I've spoken with Ms. Caruso on
Just
at
a
least 2 or
courtesy.
3 occasions and arranged for her to speak with Mr. Burney as recently as this afternoon. And I've instructed Mr. Burney to have an informational session with the retirees to answer any of their questions that they may have and to try to figure out a way that we can accommodate those requests. That's why I asked the question before, if it would be possible to allow any of the retirees to opt out of the 2.0 plan. I'm not so sure that's not possible, and I'd like to explore that possibility, but we will do whatever we can to work with the retirees, to meet with them. We'll meet with the police retirees. We'll meet with, I know the teachers union is preparing that as well. So we want to make sure that everybody's comfortable and that they have all the information so that they know what's coming in the 2.0 plan. Thank you.
Make a motion to adjourn.
No, we have one more item. Item number 7D for Mr. Igneri. And I think, Mr. Hempstead, you have to recuse? Is that it?
You have to recuse yourself?
Yes, thank you.
What's 7?
All right, I was just thinking about that.
7D4.
I'm leaving for a possible conflict of interest.
Okay. And you don't have to come back for the adjournment if you don't wish.
Number 4, technical correction of the Common Council action of February 14th, 2017, item 7D3, to add Sono collection project and account numbers here, duly noted. It authorizes the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with CDM Smith, Inc. for construction management and construction engineering and inspection services pertaining to Raymond and Day Streets project and the Sono collection project for a sum not to exceed $744,320. Accounts duly noted.
Mr. Igneri has moved the item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. You're opposed?
No.
You're in favor? You're abstaining?
No.
Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Kides jumped over Mr. Igneri for a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Sorry?
I'm supposed to say it. Motion to adjourn.
John said it.
I know.